Well, hello guys, and welcome back to the channel. I thought it was about time I gave you an update on how the Fiesta RS style spoiler project is going. So I've finished glass fibering and resining the lower spoiler section. I've got my upper spoiler prototype ready, and I've even given it a good sand down and a bit of a pigmented coat on the top. But I ran into a couple of problems, and today's episode's all about sharing some of those fails and where I've got to with the project. So when I applied that same resin onto the upper spoiler prototype, I had a chemical reaction. Now, I have absolutely no idea how this happened because I used the same paints and the same temperatures and everything else. I also managed to get a load of resin all over the side of the car, which was a bit of a fail on my part. So I did put some protective material over the back of the car. I think it's just got between the two, to be honest with you. So I'll show you how I cleared that one up as we go along. So I thought, right, take my mind off that bit of a fail on the lower spoiler, and we'll get the razor blade out and we'll shave off some of that excess resin. Obviously the plan longer term, once that's all cleaned up, and as satisfying as it is to just take little bits of resin off the car, the whole thing will need a good mop polish after the manufacturing process is completed. So there we go, lovely action shots, close up of the razor blade there, and actually the car's in pretty good shape considering it's been used as a design wheel for the past few months. I put just a little bit of masking tape over the holes so we don't get any moisture ingress if I'm driving the car. I think overall, yeah, not too bad. I think that's absolutely fine. So now turning attention to the Strake, which had exactly the same paint process as that spoiler that had the chemical reaction. No issues with that at all. I don't know what it was, so it could well have been that there was something on the surface or somehow the paint below wasn't fully cured. So what I'm going to do here is start making a first attempt at a glass fibre mould. So I've polished up the Strake, applied a quick coat of wax onto it, and then cutting out a cardboard surround. So this will act as the sort of halfway split in the mould, so pressing that card around the part. But obviously there's gaps between the part and the cardboard, so filling those up with a tape, I've used masking tape on this occasion, is a really good start. But the next thing to think about is how to make that barrier impervious to resins and gel coats and things like that. So I've used a bit of insulation tape, and I've got some strips of vinyl wrap which I'm laying around the perimeter. So that should give me a nice sort of shiny smooth surface to build the mould on. Using some good old-fashioned automotive wax to plug the holes, so that it's ready when I pour the resin, it doesn't kind of lock the part in, and I should be able to break it away nice and clean. So liberally applied, dunk the finger in the pot, and then sort of smooth a small fillet of wax all the way around the perimeter of that Strake. So there it be. So the next step is to start working on some locking fixtures. So I've got some plasticine here, and the idea is to just cut it into some pyramid-like shapes, and then once the mould is closed, those will lock the parts in sort of horizontal orientation, and then you can drill through and bolt it together to clamp when bonding the two bits. So I've got some nice mould release wax, which I'm applying all over the part. You can see here. Do a couple of coats, obviously wait for it to dry, buff it off, and then put another coat on. But I was quite generous, there's quite a lot of mould release wax. At this stage I'm starting to notice a little bit of rippling in the surface of the vinyl wrap, so I'm not sure if there's another chemical reaction going on here or not, but let's see how things turn out. So let's get the gel coat ready. So measuring it up and then squirting it in at about a ratio of 1–1.5% of catalyst. Make sure that's thoroughly stirred, so you combine the catalyst with the resin. You've got probably 5 to 10 minutes of pot life on that before it starts to gel and starts to go off. So the idea here is to liberally coat the whole thing, so the part, those pyramid sort of retaining features, and the backing plate with the approximate mould shape that you're trying to achieve. Once that's been applied all over, you want to leave it for probably, let's say, 4 to 6 hours, so that it's sort of dry to the touch but still a little bit tacky, and then you can lay the glass fibre up on top of that gel coat. So I built up a couple of layers of that, so it's a good thick application. So here we go, we've got some chop strand mat which I've cut roughly to size. Give it a good old scrunch to soften the fibres and make them conform nicely around the part. As you can see, I'm using another Muller rice pot, this time with the good old-fashioned polyester resin and catalyst, that same sort of 1–1.5% mix, getting the brush out. And now it's really important that you apply the resin straight onto the part and then put the fibre on. Obviously, if you don't do that, you don't get such a good bond between the fibres and the substrate. So top tip there. There we go, so we've got a nice sort of even layer of that on. Now applying that scrunched chop strand mat over the top. And the tricky bit is now to tuck it in as best as you can around the part, manage the overlaps, and give it a good dabbing with the resin. So I tend to trickle the resin on to get it started, and then I dab it and work the air bubbles out of the surface. As you can see here, that kind of stippling motion up and down until it's nicely wet. Any areas that look light in colour are where you've got air trapped. So I will be going over this with a roller to work those all out to get a nice consolidated firm mould ready for use later. So there we go, giving that a good old stipple. You can really see the layers building up there, especially over those locking feature pyramids. Looking good, just being really thorough, making sure you've got a good perimeter of resin worked in there. Time to crack out the paddle roller. So going over the surface in a back and forth motion, you're teasing the air out through the laminate, so you have a nice solid part. So you can see here that little footprint where it's been rolled over, and the really glossy areas where you've got good consolidation and the resin's coming up to the surface. Because this is a tooling part, I'm not too concerned about keeping the weight down and trying to get the fibre volume fraction right. It's actually all about getting a good solid quality consolidation, because this will be used again and again as a mould. So then just working around those details, and then needling it in a nice warm environment, ideally around 20 degrees C, which is always hard in the UK in winter time. So providing a little bit of warmth from a hairdryer, sponsored by Vidal Sassoon. So we're able to get just a little bit of that chemical reaction started. Okay, so there it is. Leave it overnight and then come back to the part the next day. So I'd like to thank Muller Rice and Vidal Sassoon for their support today. So here we are, looking pretty solid, nicely consolidated. Listen to that, like a freshly baked loaf of bread. So we're going to peel away all the sort of unneeded bits, as it were. So cardboard off, get rid of the vinyl wrap, and let's have a look at what we've got underneath. Quite excited about this. Admittedly, I've cut a few corners and I've not used proper plasticard as backing, so I just wanted to get a feel for the process and to see how far we can get. Uh-oh, what have we got here? So it looks like there's quite a lot of rippling, very deep rippling on the surfaces, and there's almost like a top layer that's peeled away from the vinyl. So I'm still going to trim around the outside using the diamond Dremel. Obviously wearing gloves and a mask are really important, because you don't want to be breathing in the sort of fumes and the dust coming off from the cutting process. So actually it pulls away quite nicely, and the edge isn't actually that sharp because of the diamond cutting. It's almost sanding as it cuts. So pretty impressed really with this as a tool. I think it's the way to go for detailed part trimming. Magical. So just chasing around the perimeter, trying to tuck it in as close as possible while leaving enough of a perimeter. So frustratingly, I don't think cardboard was the best choice here. I've had a go at really trying to break out the part from the mould, but unfortunately there's been a chemical reaction again between the resin and the gel coat. Despite using mould release wax, I've really struggled to set this free. So, deep breath, time to reconsider the plan. So things go wrong. This is an example of when the window stopped working on the car. So one of the cables had rusted through due to a bit of moisture collecting in the door. We had to learn how to rebuild a regulator. Spent 4 hours taking it apart, putting it back together. But hey, there's always a way through these things. So it's important to, keep a positive mindset while working on cars. After all, it's a fun hobby. It's something we're here to enjoy. So that's the joy of being an engineer, guys. You get to learn new things, be creative, and use your knowledge to solve problems. So even when you're having a tough day and things don't quite go to plan, and let's face it, I've had 3 pretty epic fails this time round, there's always next time, so don't lose hope. And on that jolly note, thanks very much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. For now, engineer out.